Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So I want to welcome all the brothers to the Real Dads Club. And this evening we have a very special guest. I want to call him the Survivor King. I mean, what a brother. Bert, welcome. And I'll let you introduce yourself to the brothers here at the Real Dads Club. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is, I'm Uncle Mike here, and I'm glad that you could join us.
All right, my brother. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you for the opportunity. Derek, you know, my love to you, brother, always for keeping the work going and just keeping us dads in check. Uncle Mike, thank you for the introduction. I am just here as a fellow brother in the field of the mental and behavioral health, and really just bringing that conversation and keeping to bring that conversation into fatherhood initiatives, because we cannot overlook the impacts on fathers for their mental and emotional wellness, and the fact that there isn't enough conversation around emotional wellness for us as males and fathers. And so as many of us are struggling and going through our own struggles, you know, as you said, my brother, I am a survivor of a lot of things. It's by the grace of God that I'm still here. It's by the grace of God that I'm still able to be coherent in what I do and do the work that I do. So I'm just happy to be with you here. Derek and I, we go way back, and just really being part of this. I remember years ago, and I kept pressing on Derek. Everywhere I see him, Derek, where's the mental health? Where's the mental health? We got to do the mental health piece. We got to talk about mental health and suicide prevention. So I'm glad to be here with you. I always try to be at the meetings, but I got to tell you, about 30 different people are trying to clone me. So I got to try to just be as where I can. All right. But my brothers, I am just happy to be here with you. I want us to have a conversation. This is not a PowerPoint. This is a conversation. I want us to talk about two things. You know, really want to talk about parental depression, as well as I see PTSD on the agenda as well. And so postpartum depression is something that for years I've talked about postpartum depression. But the conversation has always been about the mothers. I'm like, hold on. So what happened to us fathers? What happened to us in the process of supporting our partners when she's pregnant and after the baby is born, and supporting both her and the baby, and you know how we get left out of that conversation. So that's what I want us to talk about tonight. Just a conversation around parental depression and how it affects us as men, and also the PTSD of our own experiences and addressing trauma. All right, sounds good?
Sounds great.
Yeah, brothers, listen, the mental health crisis that's going on out here, we've been in this struggle for a very long time, but no one stops to ask us how we're doing, how we're feeling, how we're holding up, just to check in on us while we're playing all the roles that we play. And we're supposed to stay efficient in all the roles that we're playing, but you know, sometimes we know the struggle is real, right? We know the struggle is real, and while we're checking on everybody else, making sure everybody's okay, who checks on us? Who asks us how we're doing? Who asks us, you know, if we're okay? So if I was to ask you right now, each one of us right now, when was the last time someone checked on you and just said, hey, whether it's a brother, hubby, you know, whatever, how are you? How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah. Honestly, I can say last Thursday, you know, with our group.
Thank you, brother. Last Thursday in this group, right?
Yeah.
In this group, last Thursday, a week ago from today, in this group. Think about that for a minute. Let's hear from everybody else. When was the last time someone checked on you and asked you how you're doing?
Well, for me, it would have been yesterday. My wife and I, we check in with each other regularly, so it's like a regular practice. Yeah.
All right, thank you, brother. It's always good when you have a supportive partner who can help you to really just check in on how you're feeling and supporting of that. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm like Joaquin, my wife said to me this morning. It's not that she says it every morning, but this morning she said, "How are you?" I guess you knew you was coming tonight, brother.
She know we were gonna have this conversation.
Right,
So you want me
right.
you are checked in.
Right.
But that's good, my brother. That's good. Happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Come on, my brothers. Talk to me. Talk to me.
I'd say this week, I had a friend check in, so check in on me and whatnot. So
A friend checked in. Awesome, brother. Awesome. Sounds good.
And also my daughter checks in.
Your daughter.
And my daughter, she checks in. Like today, she always, hey, how are you doing? Yeah.
Nice. Nice. How old is she?
28.
Nice. Okay.
I gotta say, my this morning, she
Awesome,
texts on a
brother.
regular basis.
Who did that?
My wife.
Oh, okay. Listen, the struggle is real for us as men out here who we're doing so much for everybody, checking in on everybody, making sure everybody is all right, playing all the roles that we play, making sure we're doing good at the roles that we're doing. But I don't know about you, but a lot of times we hear all the bad things that we don't do, all the bad things we're not doing, and criticism and all that. But the truth is, how many times do we really are told, hey, thank you for just being an awesome dad. Thank you for just being an awesome person. Thank you for taking care of us. Thank you for just making sure we're okay. Thank you for just being true to you. And, it's hard when you're constantly doing, and all you get is the negativity, the beat down, the criticism, and all of that stuff. And you're struggling. You're struggling. A lot of us as men, we deal with real emotional challenges. And how do we deal with that? Sometimes we drinking, we smoking, we doing illicit sexual behaviors. We got a side chick on the side and we got a whole bunch of other things going on. The relationships are not great. We're not taking care of ourselves. And only when we go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, guess what? Your blood pressure is high, your cholesterol is high, or, if you don't slow down or change what you're doing right now, you're going to have a stroke. Come on, let's be real. A lot of us, we don't take good care of our health, right? We just keep going, doing. And then God forbid one day something happens and a reality check comes in and the doctor says, listen, man, you're not good right now. You're not good right now. But we've always looked at health from a physical perspective. We've always looked at health from, and that whole thing of man up, right? How many times have we told to man up, right? How many times have we been told, oh, don't act weak or don't show emotions, or it's, you're being a punk for being emotional or showing emotions. So every day we just keep being pressed down and suppressed, and just layers of trauma we're going through, layers of struggle we're going through, pain on top of pain. And then God forbid one day, hey, did you hear Derek killed himself? Like, what? What I mean, what are you talking about? I just saw him yesterday. I was just in the group last Thursday. What are you talking about? Yeah, man, he killed himself and nobody knew what he was going through. My question is, why didn't anyone know? Why aren't we having the conversations about how we're feeling and checking in on each other in a way that you don't have to feel judged, you don't have to feel pressured in just really expressing the emotional weight and the challenges of what we're going through? I wear many hats when it comes to mental health and suicide prevention. And I got to tell you right now, it is very scary what we're seeing right now for us as men, for us as men of color, for us as men of color who are dealing with PTSD on levels that we've never seen before, trauma that we've never seen before. And unfortunately, where are the support resources for us? Where do we go when we want to have those conversations, right? We know that there have been a lot of talk about the barbershops, right? The barbershops are where, we go as men to have some real men conversation, because it's the only place that men can get to be and have those conversations. So now there's a conversation about integrating mental health services in barbershops, because that's one of the places where males and men really get together and have conversation. What are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts about the fact that we are in such a bad place in our society and still very short in services and resources?
Well, you know something? I think that the barbershop used to be that place. when I was younger. I'm one of the men in their 60s. It used to be the place, but now the barbershop is just full of some nonsense. Oh yeah, I met this broad the other day. That's foolishness. I think we're afraid of talking about the real problem, which, like you said, is mental health. I have a friend in Kenya, and we always talk about there are levels to mental health. I said we all suffer. And as Black men, we definitely suffer from PTSD from birth. I was born in Harlem. My mother and father broke up a long time ago. So, like I said, as Black men, we definitely suffer from PTSD. And my brothers who were in corrections that I knew, I'm a retired teacher, but I worked in jails. I'm sure they suffer from PTSD. And nobody is really paying attention. It had a lot to do with what you were saying. Oh, man up. And so we take on that man up mentality. And as a result, we suffer in silence.
Right, right.
I'm gonna drop my mic.
My brother, thank you. Drop that mic. Drop it hard. Yeah, my brother, thank you.
Yeah,
Anyone
I like
want to add on to that?
I like to say that I come from the school of handle it. Put an H on your chest. This is, and you know something, this came back to bite me in my butt a couple of weeks ago. My grown daughter, my firstborn, is in her 40s, and she was telling the story when she was in, I believe it was junior high junior high, and something happened at school, and at the dinner table, I told her to put an H on her chest and handle it, because that was the way I handle things. You know, so when she told me this as a grown woman now, and I'm looking at her, and she started like tearing, and I said, damn, man, I dropped the ball, because I didn't really know how to handle that conversation with my daughter at that time. And so I said, put an H on your chest and handle it. You know, don't be whining about it, because that's the way I was brought up. You didn't whine. You handled it. You did the best you could, and if you failed, you kept it within. You didn't whine about it. You didn't, you know. And with that, I want to ask you one question. Can you give me a definition of what are you saying? PSD or PTSD? What is the definition of what is that?
Post-traumatic
PTSD.
stress.
Okay.
Post-traumatic
Post-traumatic
stress
stress.
disorder.
Okay.
A lot of times you've heard about PTSD, and it used to be about the military. Everything was about the military with PTSD, because they always thought that the military were the only ones who experienced trauma. And then for years, we've been talking and advocating that there are so many traumas in our lives, just being and living in our society, just being and living in a city that we're living on top of each other, just being and living in an environment where there are so many things, violence, gun violence, all kinds of tragedies, all kinds of things, 9/11, you know, all these different things that have happened in our lives that have been traumatic. And so PTSD is not only about the military. And from my work in the behavioral health field, I can tell you right now that there are more people with PTSD than people who are in the military. All right. And so when we look at that and we understand the conversation about how trauma has become such a key part of our lives, but not addressed, not being addressed. And, you know, I'm glad that my brother said it earlier. We go to the barbershop, or you're even in conversations around groups of people. The conversation is just ridiculous. It's not really touching on anything real. It's not really touching on anything fruitful, but there's a reason for that. So let me tell you what the reason is. We are afraid to open that door. We are afraid to really tap into how we are feeling. And when I heard my brother say that his wife checked in on him and asked him how he's doing, I'm going to ask that question. If you were asked how you're feeling or how you're doing, would you answer that question genuinely? Would you answer that question truly about how you're really feeling? Or do you think if I was to really answer the question, my loved ones would look at me differently, my friends would look at me differently, people would look at me different?
Right.
So the bigger part of the issue is not about the question. The bigger part of the issue is, how do we answer the question. Because I know I know that for us as men, I run men's group, male support groups, and I got to tell you, my work is on emotional wellness. So I make sure my group knows that when I do my groups, there are on emotions. We don't want to, we're not going to get into it. We want to know how you're doing, how you're feeling. Suicide rates are higher for men. Suicide rates are higher for men. Men attempt suicide rates higher. Men of color complete suicide at rates that would be shocking to you. Now we have as young as 4-year-old children who are thinking of attempted and talking about killing themselves. Now, can you imagine you being the father of a child at that young age and hearing your child talking about wanting to kill themselves, hearing your child talk about, oh, I'm depressed, I'm bipolar, hearing your child talk about not seeing any value in this life? The struggle is real. It is happening. It is happening so frequently in our Black and brown communities. But as my brother said, we're not having the conversation. We're talking about a whole bunch of other things. But the real conversations that we should be having and checking in on each other, it is not happening. A lot of us have physical health issues as a result of the emotional trauma we've been through. How many of us have ever thought about the fact that the pain and the suffering that we're going through, the feelings that we have, the insomnia that we have, the change of our diet, the appetite, the change of just enjoying things in life comes from our emotional dysregulation, our emotional challenges.
What, you know what, bro? I want to say something because you
Brother
said something about.
Brother Dishay, can you hold on 1 second? We have a
Sure.
hand up, and then we'll.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, my brother.
Paul has a statement, and then we'll go to Brother Dishay.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I think we need to have those conversations, and I think we also need to be careful when we have those conversations, because I think there's two sides to it. And I agree. I forgot who said it earlier. As Black men and as men, we're taught to push on and push through. Like everything is good. And I think the pushing through part is beneficial in the sense that, okay, yeah, you have to keep going, because life doesn't just stop for you when you have when you have certain experiences. But on the flip side of that token, I think the part that's always been missing is, okay, yeah, you're pushing through, but you still have to recognize you're going through something. It's okay to say, I'm hurt. It's okay to cry. It's okay to say, yo, this is tough, right? And I say that with the caveat of, I'm a firm believer that there's nothing in life that we're going to go through that we are not built for. And what I mean by that is, I can understand if you were the first person to ever go through it, right? I can understand the shock. But because really under the sun, there's no new experience that we're going to go through that someone else hasn't gone through, that we haven't seen. And so I think in terms of that, I think that we really need to come together and share our experiences, because sometimes we go through something and we're able to pull ourselves out. And there's somebody else who's either getting ready to go into what we've been through, or somebody else who's going through what we've been through, and they don't see a way out. And the last thing I'll say is, my example of that is, I've always wondered how my brother was never able to break free from the hand of prison, because he started going to jail, juvenile when he was younger, and then eventually adult jail as he got older. And he spent most of his life on earth confined in a prison cell. And I say that to say, I talk to so many brothers who have been incarcerated, who I never asked them what their experience was like in jail, but then I see them when they come out and they turn their life around. They'll start a business, they got a family, they've left their homies, they've really turned a corner. And I've always wondered why my brother was never able to do that. Why did prison have such a strong hold on him? And why these other brothers were able to come out? And I've often wondered, you know, was it because he never talked about it? Like, what was the difference that he wasn't able to pull himself out? And so I say that again, I say it to say, because I've gone through a lot of things, and a lot of the men in this group have been able to talk to me and push me to go, okay, I can figure this out. And they'll give me tips, and I take their advice and tips and things like that. So
Thank you, Paul. Brother Brett, you want to comment on what he said?
Can I
Yeah.
say something to Brother Brett real quick? That's related to the
Yes,
topic. He was saying something about when Jerome asked about PTSD. Look, I feel like, look, my grandpa was in World War II. So we've all, not just me as a blood relative, but people in my age group have also went through PTSD because they saw my grandpa in the neighborhood. We lived in a big community in Brooklyn. And Puma, don't answer yet, brother. I'm not talking East New York yet. I'm talking Bed-Stuy. And so, of course, I'm a man, I'm 63. So guys in my age group who saw my grandpa coming from the war, of course they're going to feel those effects also. You know, I want to say that to Brother Brett, because he mentioned when somebody asked him where the term came. You know, we probably heard the term as it was related to Vietnam, but I'm sure it was before that. My grandpa was World War II. Okay, I'm going to turn my mic off.
So thank you. And to my brother, so I'm sure we've all heard of this term before, nervous breakdown, right? A nervous breakdown. That's what mental health used to be called, because we didn't want to call it mental health. So we'd say, hey, you know, Brett had a nervous breakdown. Or if Brett had a mental illness, we didn't call it a mental illness. It was called something else. He had a nervous break. He went psychotic. You know, you start hearing all those terms and stuff that really was just really dehumanizing of a person. But I want to go back to something my brother said about his brother. One of the reasons, and you're very right, one of the reasons why we have to be careful when we have these particular conversations is to remember that everyone's experience is personal and is valid for them. We all are on this journey of life, and we all experience things ourselves. Some people get held down or held back or drowned by their trauma. Some people are able to rise out of their trauma. Some people are able to be reborn out of their trauma. Some people get stuck, like literally they get stuck and they cannot move because the trauma has taken away their ability to see, to be able to do, and to be. So you'll meet some people who they can't see past what they've gone through. The trauma has really impacted them in such a way that they're stuck. And so no matter what you do and no matter how you try to help them, they just can't. We have to understand the way how trauma works on the mind. This is why we need to have this conversation, because you could be proposing all the positivity, all the roles and lessons and things for people to learn and brothers to learn and say, hey, brother, well, guess what? I went through something similar. So because I came out of it, you can come out of it, right? Trauma impacts us all in different ways, right? But when we have the ability to express what we're feeling, the way we're feeling it, it helps us to really, one, get it off of our chest, two, get people to hear what we're hearing and feeling for ourselves, three, get people to realize that, hey, guess what? Just because we were homeless doesn't mean that homelessness affected us the same way. Just because we became a father doesn't mean that we're both doing great as fathers. Just because I'm taking care of somebody else's child and I'm struggling with it, but guess what? You're doing well with it doesn't mean that, you know, it's so we all have our path and our journey. We have to create a safe space for us to be able to share exactly how we're feeling and not be judged. Do you know that one of the most significant places we as men get judged is within our own group of brothers? as brothers, one of the most judgmental places we find ourselves in is within our same group. This is why when we start having the conversation, this is why we start tearing down those barriers. This is why when we start normalizing the conversation, we realize that we're all similar. It's just that we are all on different levels of the same path. I'll give you an example. One night I was having one of my male group sessions, and there was a gentleman he's 72 years old. And he said, listen, this whole emotional conversation has really gotten a hold of me, man. And he broke down crying. He was crying, and we knew that something was going on. So whenever something emotional like that happens, all that we do, everybody stop talking, and we just keep telling our brother, just breathe, brother, just breathe. It's okay, just breathe. And nothing else happens until that brother is able to just really take that breath, where he's now able to say, or even just say, I can't talk about it right now, but this was a moment. Because sometimes you got to give a person space when that box is open. And there was a 19-year-old in the group that night. So our group varies in age. 72-year-old, he said, listen, I was victimized when I was 14 years old. I was victimized when I was 14-year-old. So for all those 50 odd years of his life, he's been carrying around this trauma of what he has gone through. It has affected him in his life. It has affected his family life, his marriage life, his relationship with his children. And he carried that trauma for all those years. And now when he was in this group, he finally felt safe in this space. And let me tell you, he cried like a baby, right? He cried like a baby. And then after we got him to, start breathing, and he felt a little bit better, and he was like, I can't talk right now, but this was a moment. This 19-year-old young man said, listen, man, he said, listen, I don't want to be like you. I don't want to wait until I'm a senior or a grown man for me to feel what you're, and carry that baggage and carry that pain to build that up inside. 19 years old, hearing a 72-year-old man who had a child as young as him, but also had kids who were 2 times his age. And he said, man, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. So I'm glad that I'm in this space. So right now, in my teenage years, before I step out of 19, I want to talk about how I'm feeling. Can you imagine the environment and the atmosphere and the emotions in that space when you have someone that could be your father, your grandfather, talk about carrying the weight of the emotional trauma for over 50 years. And now finally at 72 years old, is now able to finally talk about an experience he had at age 14. You can't even imagine the weight. You can't even imagine the health challenges that come from that. You can't even imagine how it has affected professional and personal, even intimacy. You can't even imagine the realities of. So we need to have this conversation because many of us are affected by our emotional state, the trauma that we've been through. And let me tell you something, my brother, we have been traumatized for 400 or 500 years from just slavery. So the post-trauma of slavery alone is so deeply ingrained in our DNA. And if you understand how trauma works, trauma can change a person's DNA. It can change a person's physical and psychological being. It can affect someone in a way that totally debilitates you. So while we're talking about all the positive things and all the good things that's going on, there may be someone right now in this space or in the space that you are who's holding on to some traumatic event, some traumatic incident, some levels of trauma, the PTSD of that, the reality of that depression, the reality of the weight of all that, the reality of the fact that I've never been asked how I'm feeling and know that I could truly answer the question without being afraid that if I answer the question and tell you how I'm really feeling, you're going to look at me like I'm mad. You're going to look at me like, hey, you need to be in an institution. You need to be locked up. You need to be locked away. Those are some of the responses we get sometimes when we really tell people how we're feeling.
So, Brother Burt, you mentioned something that's so right on point. One reason why we might not have these conversations is because of fear. But I was also thinking sometimes it's because it's not modeled. We haven't seen it modeled even to have the conversation. So we don't even have the language. And so I think as elders and older men, that's why that teenager was so fortunate to see an elder actually model how to be vulnerable, how to be honest with his feelings. And we didn't see that. So, kudos to you to create such an environment that an older elder can model it to a younger generation, because it's very difficult to do something that you don't see modeled. You cannot replicate, so I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. And you're right. Again, where do we see safe spaces being created for men and males to really just have a real conversation? I don't want to hear about sports. I don't want to hear about the economy. I don't want to hear about global. I don't want to hear none of that crap. I want to hear how we as men can really talk about how our experiences are. A lot of us are in relationships. We're lonely. We're not pleased. We're not happy. We're not getting our needs met, but we're in these relationships. We're playing these roles, and no one knows the real struggle that we're going through. No one knows. Some of us are on medication simply because of just being unstable in where we are. A lot of us are living in our homes, but our homes is not the safe environment that it should be. It's not a conducive environment for us to grow in. And so as men, a lot of us are really, truly struggling in plain sight. So when you talk about that model, my brother, when you talk about seeing that model, here is my question. Who are the role models that we're showing in our communities? Who are the role models that we're saying, hey, this is someone that should be looked up to because of these accomplishments and this? Why aren't we looking at the role models who are really breaking through the mold of what society's social construct have been? Why is it that you have to be financially well off, or a sports or a celebrity? Or why can't we look at real people addressing real issues and say that's a model, or that's someone that we should be promoting in our communities, especially to our young men? Our two generations, this generation and the generation before that, emotionally broken in ways that you can't even imagine. And you see that by just going out in our society, and you see a lot of these kids, they don't know how to have a conversation. They don't even know the words to use in how to express anything. Everything, the mobile technology has replaced so much of our lives that we're living through the screens, but we're not living connected to each other. So when you look at depression, when you look at anxiety, when you look at fear of just having a conversation, and when you look at how the sexuality issues have now become like a major issue, right? For years, I used to talk about loneliness. Years, Derek can tell you. I remember one day we had an event, and I was talking about with my piece, not only mental, but how can you be lonely in an intimate marriage, in an intimate relationship, in a marriage? And people who are looking at me like, man, what are you talking about? Remember, Derek, they were like, what are you talking about? How can you be married and in an intimate relationship and lonely? Right? And look at it now. Loneliness has risen to one of the top 3 mental health crises, not just in this country, but around the world. Because COVID exposed a lot of things that we never wanted to talk about. COVID exposed the realities of life. The number one issue that we really are facing is our health. And my brothers, let me tell you, I work with a lot of the health institutions. I work with a lot of practitioners. I'm telling you right now, if you have not gotten a checkup from the neck up, you need to make that a priority. So Bert, if you're only focusing on your physical health and those ailments that you're literally feeling, whether it's your joint, your back, whatever it is, you really need to take an evaluation from the neck up. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Yeah, somebody was saying something.
Yeah,
who was it?
So Bert, we have a question or a comment from Puma.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bert, thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate you, man. To be honest with you, for the last 30 minutes, I've been trying to figure out how to craft this question so you can understand what I'm trying to find out. Okay, first I want to say thank you to Brother Jerome for having the courage to say he did the wrong thing. But that's what he appreciate you for that, brother. So I'm from that same school of put an H on your chest and handle it. I grew up that way. Hey, you ain't got it bad. Slaves had it worse than you. Get it together. Stop playing. Come on, you want it. You know what I mean? That thing. I feel, here's my question. I feel like now I'm happy that mental health is being observed and people are acknowledging it, right? But I feel there is a possibility that it's being too far to everything is mental health. Everything is mental health. Like as a professional, I'm asking this question. Am I right to think everything that people say mental health is not really mental health? Can you diagnose and tell them, hey, that's not mental health, that's something else? Because everybody, to me, is like, well, not everybody, a lot of folks are using that as an excuse now, mental health, rather than being, what you call it, take accountability for their actions and mental health. Now, in the world as a whole is saying, hey, I respect you for having the courage to say it's mental health. Some examples: the tennis player from Azaki, celebrated for that. I'm not saying she's wrong. Could be true. The basketball player. I mean, all these people are doing it now, and it's being celebrated. I feel like all of it's not 100%. There's a balance there for me. It's not all mental health. Somebody got to be able to tell them that it's not, and it's this instead. That's really my question. How do you determine what's really mental health and what's not mental health?
My brother, that is a great question. That is the multi-million-dollar question. I don't even think we have time to unpack all of that, but let me just say this.
It took 30 minutes to craft it.
Right, imagine that, right? It took you 13 minutes just to figure out how to ask the question. Right? So let's go back in time for a little bit. So the whole mental health conversation started when the Virginia Tech and Columbine mass shootings happened, right? It was those mass shootings that started the conversation about mental health, where they had to really think about how could someone really do such a heinous act as they did with those shootings. Now, if you notice, every time something happens, especially when it's a shooting or mass shooting or whatever, what's the first comment that you hear? It's, what is the state of that person's mind? What is the mental health of that person? They start to evaluate and assess that. But this is one of the reasons why the conversation needs to happen, because I think we have all been just really thrown into this idea of mental health, but not knowing what it is. So if I'm able to share my screen, I am going to show you something to answer your question.
Please.
And let me, am I able to share my screen, Uncle? My uncle?
Uncle Mike?
Yeah, you're able to share, Brett.
Yeah, good, Brett.
All right, so
Sure.
let me show you something. Let me see, share if I'm, give me 1 second, let me try. It's not showing me the option to share.
Hey, Brett, you're not showing any gray hair, man.
Oh, brother, listen, I have a whole lot of them right here. I got a whole lot of them right here. I got a whole
technology part. You sure? I know.
Yeah, but I can't share. Okay, here we go. All right, I got it now. All right, I'm going to show you this. Now, in every one of my presentations that I do, no matter where I do the presentation, this one slide is a slide that I always show. And it's so critical because my goal is to break down, let me go back, break down this whole stigma and misunderstanding of what mental health is. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
All right. So by looking at this definition, what is the first thing that jumps out at you?
As a real estate broker, I see houses for sale.
Okay. All right. What else? Come on, talk to me. What do you see?
Community.
Okay. All right. Let's not look at the pictures. Let's look at the words, Puma. Let's
look at
the
words. Okay. The pictures.
Look at the definition. And then you can associate that with the picture.
Well, I see, like, emotional, psychological, social, like there's a lot that, embraces, like what creates challenges.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. It's a lot that, but there is something significant about this definition.
I see ups and downs, like positive and negative, not just one, both of them.
There you go. There you go.
It says cope with function in everyday life.
There you go.
So your ability to deal with life.
And that ability comes from the good, the bad, the ups, the downs, the happiness, the sorrows, the disappointments, the failures, the successes, all of that. Mm-hmm. So this changes a lot of what people have thought they know about mental health. There is a all negative connotation. There's a whole piece where it integrated this whole thing about people with bipolar and all these different illnesses and diagnoses. But our mental health is really just our ability to cope with everyday life, the challenges of life, right? The good, the bad. Even when you're happy, you're still in a mental health state, right? Even when you've made a success in something, it still affects your mental health, right? So it's not about us thinking in a negative way. This is why it's so important for us to relearn and understand that our mental health, everybody has a stage or level of your mental health. It could change from this minute to the next minute. It could change from today to tomorrow. It could change in a breath. It's not something that's static. It's not something that is applied all over our lives. It's something that is part of us coping and functioning with everyday life. Now, if you think about that, if you really think about that and ask yourself, holy crap, am I really been living my best life? Have I really been embracing the life that I'm living with gratitude? Or am I the stressor of my own life? Am I the one who is adding more layers of complexity and trauma and depression and anxiety into my own life? So you see how this definition can change just what we thought about mental health and now give a whole new definition and a whole new meaning to understand what this is. And let me show you again, real quick, my brother, I see your hand up. We have a high rate of suicide among health and mental health providers. Let me say that again. We have a high rate of suicide, trauma among health and mental health providers. We have high rates of suicide among clergy leaders. We have high rates of suicide among people that you normally would see and tell yourself, oh, that person is well off. Oh, my brother, Uncle Mike, he look well off. He's doing good and all that. You never know what someone's mental health is or the state of their mental health. And it's only when we create safe spaces to have these conversations where people feel like they are not afraid or ashamed to say how they're feeling, will we break through that mold. My brother, go ahead. I see you had your hand up first, and then we go to Doug.
I just wanted to say too, we also have to deal with that, the political and propaganda side. So like you said, the Columbine shooting, mental health was then brought up, but mental health was brought up because of the color of the skin of the shooters, right? Because when we look at statistics, when we look at young Black men who are accused of a crime, mental health is then pushed to the back, or their mental status is pushed to the back, and they're criminals, they're animals, they're thugs. So we also have to deal with that initial stigma because, again, going back to, like you said, the Columbine shooting, like the Vegas shooter, most people still don't even know the Vegas shooter's name. Most people don't even know that the Vegas shooter was a white male in his late 30s who was a multi-millionaire, right? And when that shooting happened, they said, we don't know what to think. We don't know who to be mad at, because they didn't want to frame it as this person was a monster. So there had to be something mentally wrong because he didn't fit the description of what society is trying to tell us as a criminal. As compared to, if you look at the Central Park Six, they were monsters and yada, 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 right? And so we still, as Black men, we still have to deal with that stigma of, we can't be viewed as someone who has mental issues or struggling with everyday life. we have to be emboldened to be the monsters that they portray, right? And so we still have to wrestle with that as well.
The struggle is real for us, my brother. The struggle is so real. Go ahead, Doug.
I want to say thank you for coming on, Brett. This is a much needed discussion and topic that we definitely need to have in our community, outside our community. Yeah, I see why, a lot of the people, boots on the ground, no matter what field they're in, working with different vast majorities of people, different races, colors, creeds, they put the work in and they reach a point of burnout. Kind of like when COVID came and the healthcare system was challenged and pushed to the brink. Some of them, lost it too, so these things, yes, definitely happen, when people are going to work doing their jobs and they're doing it very well. It's not that they're doing nothing wrong. It's just that the people who have to receive it has the challenges and sometimes they just don't have all the answers to give to the people. But I want to ask this question based on this healthcare. Now, we had the 53rd governor of New York, stayed in there for 3 terms. It was George Pataki. He took away state institutions that housed, the mentally ill and stuff like that. I just want to ask your opinion. Do you think that should come back, or to some degree we need state institutions or city institutions that can deal with some of this problem, or what do you think is a solution?
That's a great question, brother. That's a great question. Right now, all I'm going to say is we need every resource possible. But one of the biggest things that I'm fighting for, and I've been working on, is everybody does not need to be in the same line going in for services, right? We have to create a triage system that says, if Doug is coming in, Doug may just want to have a talk with someone who he just having, he just want to have a talk. He should not be in the same line as a person who is just walking around talking to himself like, yo, man, what is the day going like? And he shouldn't be in that same line. He shouldn't be in the same line with someone who is also really just experienced a traumatic event and now is struggling with that. Why do we have one path, everybody going into the same path, and then we're tying up the system of the different providers and services? So yes, we do have some people who need to be in an institution, not because it's a bad thing, but they need to be in a safe environment, that they're safe from society and society is also safe from them, right? Because we have seen people with mental illness who have killed other people, right? Who have done serious fatal damages to other people. So yes, they need to have a safe environment for them to be. We also need community-based resources. Everything is not clinical. Everybody doesn't need to see a clinician or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. What about peer services? What about peer support groups? What about programs where people can come into a space and feel like this group is about people who have gone through exactly what I've gone through? I feel better here than sitting with a psychiatrist who I can't connect to this person because this person has never had the experience. So, Doug, we need multiple services. We need multiple resources, but there is a place for every one of these things to be in our society, because different people fit into different models, and it's about taking care of the holistic health of our society. Just like this picture, if you look at the picture, you see homes, you see schools, you see churches, businesses, you see, big cities, small cities, you see communities. This is what it is. We need a myriad of services so that anyone in any state of their mental health or a diagnosis can have the appropriate place and services for them.
Yes, and I do agree. I was correction officer Rikers Island, and I work with the mental health 730 dudes all the time. They call them 730. But I had to be like a counselor, pretty much, and then, you had to make sure these dudes was taking their medication when the nurse come around, else they'll act out later and stuff like that. So definitely the same way we got trained in corrections is where I'm going with this. Every job title should actually have a training on mental health, I think, yes, based on what you said. And I agree with what you said.
Yes. And Doug, that's part of the work that I do. I travel around the country to do training on how do you engage with someone who is experiencing emotional distress. And let me tell you how bad it is. We got Daniel's Law passed in New York, right? Daniel Prude was killed because law enforcement was called when he was having an emotional distress. And when they responded, and they saw his erratic behavior, they shot and killed him. Now, there have been many people in New York who have died as a result of law enforcement responding and killing people. So the law has passed that says police officers are not the ones who should be responding to people in emotional distress because of the fear of them being killed, or just seeing a police officer can trigger that person into a more erratic state. So there's a lot of work to be done, but my work has been for over 20 years, again, addressing this topic and talking about how we were in crisis 20 years ago, never paying attention to it, never addressing it. And here we are now in a complex trauma. This is what we're dealing with right now. Complex trauma, layers of trauma. But you know, again, continuing the conversation, and thank you for that, Doug.
Well,
I see Jaqueen. Yeah,
Yeah, thanks, brother. I love that, you know, like this explanation of mental health. Like, but like for somebody like me, or as old as me, or coming up behind me, like we always thought mental health means something's wrong with you. So it's not easy for us to read this and go, oh, let me go get some help, or let me, because we still associate it with something's wrong with me. Like there's something mentally wrong with me. And so we won't go down and sit down and get a checkup from the neck, not knowing that it's for support, it's for a myriad of things. Like you said, we still has that connotation, because I know people close to me and even in my family that will not go to a therapist because mental health means the stigma, you know. And the second piece is that, like, I'm 61 and I didn't even know how to identify my feelings. It was in my late 30s, you know, and it was a young man, old enough to be my son. We're having a conversation. He was like, yeah, but how do you feel? Nah, I'm good. Like, well, yeah, but how do you feel about this? Nah, that was good too. And you know what? He got me a paper to identify with different words, so I could learn to identify, use these words to identify what I was feeling. So I think too, like from being suppressed for so many years, like I wasn't even in touch with that stuff, and didn't have a word to say like, man, I feel sad, I feel anxious, or no, I feel, you know, not good enough. I don't feel, you know, those things. I didn't know that till late in life. I didn't even have words to even say it. So I don't know if that's anybody else's, but that definitely we learn too as Black men too, like to not talk about it, to suppress it, to, I believe, to the point where we don't even know how to say it.
A great point, my brother. Great point, and so true. I remember when I first came out about my struggles back in, I'd say 2002, 2003. 99% of the people in my life went left, right, back, forward. I stood there by myself. I've never felt more alone. I never felt more degraded. I never felt more ostracized. Just because I talked about how I was feeling and how the way I was feeling, I just didn't feel like, you know, a purpose in life. And people were just like, yo, man, something wrong with you. You know, you need to get help. I can't be around you. You know, it's just, yeah. And to see where I'm at now today, 20 odd years later, where I am speaking at events and people like crying at events, and my God, thank you for being a voice for those of us who can't be that genuine, can't be that real, can't be that open. For you to stand there and say, you are a man and this is how you're feeling. You tried to kill yourself, you experienced depression, anxiety, different levels of trauma. People like, I don't even know how you're still standing. But for you to just in a group of people speaking at an event where nobody knows you, like I have guys come up to me and say, listen, man, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could just be as honest about how I'm feeling. I can't because I fear what my wife or my kids or my church or my, you know, there's so many fears within us just to be able to express how we truly are feeling. So you got to understand, my brothers, we have been living under this mask for so long. Many of us are so broken behind the mask, right? And to your point, you talk about the age piece. Yeah, but think about how long we have been suffering, right? How long we have been suffering and crying out for help and no one is listening. You know, so we have made progress. We are making progress. Like the more we can have the conversation, the more we can normalize the conversation. And this is why I go around and I talk about my experience, because, you know, when people look at me, they say, oh, you know, you're such a great guy. You're, you know, you look good, you talk good, you're educated, all these things. And then when they hear me talk about my living, not that I just lived through it, that I'm still living with it now, these things, they go like, hold on, what? What? So it blows their mind. So we have a lot of work to do. A lot is being done, a lot is being accomplished, but we have a lot more to do. And it takes us all just being able to truly come forward and just talk about this is how we're feeling and just normalize it so other brothers around us can really know that. Don't stay hidden under mask. Let's take the mask off. Let's get rid of the mask and start being, you know, the great people that we are, and so that we can breathe. Thank you, brother.
Brett, you know, thank you so much. You're being such a model, of an example to brothers of that it can be done, that we can be honest and in touch with our feelings and start our healing journey. So that's incredible. We have some more comments. Leo, then Jerome, and then Ola.
Thank you, Uncle Mike. Brett, thank you for what you're doing right now. It was when you first started off to ask when was the last time, you know, someone said how we're doing, I actually had to think. It made me think, right? Yeah. Because we don't go around asking ourselves that. But you know, I recently had my partner, she asked me, I think yesterday, how are you? You know, how's work going? She asked that. But the more important thing is what you just said about how you tell people about what you're still going through, and it's a shocker to them. Mm-hmm. And that's what blew me away, because I think when you asked us that, it was nice within the context of being within the Zoom. But imagine if we were in person, looking the way we look, dressed the way we are, who would actually think that any of us are going through anything? And I'm thinking, and I'm saying that based on the assumptions. And I think that's the big thing with mental health, is the assumption part, where you look because you're dressed maybe a certain way, or you look the par, or your social economic status, might shield you away from mental health, and it doesn't. So it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter your appearance. Mental health affects everyone. So I'm saying this to say that mental health might be asked on, to someone who, quote unquote, might look like they're going through something. And the person who's well dressed, or you think have money, are the one who are going through it the most. So I'm just saying, mental health, don't assume, and just assume that mental health is everyone and not just certain people.
My brother, give me a second, Uncle Mike. My brother, listen. To your point, and again, thank you for just sharing that. I'll say this. Over 98% of the suicide cases that I work on where someone had killed themselves, over 98% of those people, no one knew that they were suicidal. No one knew that they were dealing with depression. No one knew they were traumatized, right? We wear the mask. This is why I brought up the analogy of the mask. So we project ourselves by a lot of outward experiences, outward accomplishments, titles and roles, financial status, the car we drive, the size house we live in, where we work. We project that to society to say, this is how successful I am. And because you see that, we immediately start thinking to ourselves that we know Brett is well off, man. I wish I would be like Brett. But little do you know that that's just an outward mask. You're just seeing things that are truly not a reflection of how I am really feeling or what my experiences are. And that's why until we have these conversations where we're not afraid to have the conversation, where we really can look at each other and say to ourselves, hey, Uncle Mike, listen, man, I'm just checking in on you, brother. I just want to know how you're doing. And I want you to know that I want you to be honest with me and just, tell me how you're doing. Let's have that conversation rather than just us being normal and say, yo, man, I'm good, brother. I'm good, when you know you're not. So let's not look and assume. And I say this all the time when I do training around crisis response, because I do trainings too. I said, you should never assume that what you're seeing in front of you is really what you're seeing in front of you. You should never assume by someone's behavior, their reaction, or even the answers of the words that they give that you know. You never assume, because our assumptions are one of the biggest misconceptions that we have in this space. So thank you, my brother. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have some Jerome and then Ola and then Brother Dishi. Go ahead, Brother Jerome, you're muted.
Thank you, brother, for being here. It's a lot of food for thought here. This is my mental health assistance here. This is where I do get perspectives from the other brothers. There's two things I wanted to say. One is our community, if you want to call it community, in New York and the places I grew up, were very dysfunctional already. And that dysfunction, which you brought about, what you talked about as far as slavery and stuff like that, is kind of directly related to that. When Paul was talking about his brother in jail, 95% of our problems, or 90% of our people that's in jail, are in there for financial issues, crimes related to economics. And then the other thing was, what do you think about that three personalities that we walk around with? We have that public face, we have our family life, and then we have our interspace that we don't, fully come out and show.
Oh, it's a whole lot more than three, my brother. It's a whole lot more than three.
Okay,
I can take it. Yeah, I know. And the three that we're more familiar with. Let me just say that. It's the three that we're more familiar with. But here's the thing. If you take that three, right, of you, for example, Jerome, just an example, those three can change very quickly in the event of something traumatic, in the event of something that threatens your life, in the event of something that threatens your well-being. Those three things can just change and morph into 10 other things, just like that, right? But as we go through our lives, right, the question is, are we able to deal with the unexpected and the unsuspecting things, right? I know a lot of people say God never gives you more than he knows you can handle. Well, that's not true, right? that is not true. So I know, and I can speak to that in a whole lot of levels, but you understand what I'm saying? Those three things are when things are normal, quote unquote normal, we go down that path. But as soon as something disrupts that path, we now get into what we call the multiverse, right? We got the multiverse of so many possibilities that are now impacted that you have to adjust and change to. You may go from happy to sad. You may go from silent to violent. You can go from being abused to being the abuser. So all these different things changes when we have and we run into certain experiences. And that's why when we have these type of conversations, it is so important, because other people may listen to you and say, holy crap, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking something was wrong with me because I went from 0 to 100 because something happened. And then another brother be like, what are you talking about? That's nothing for you to be upset about. That's nothing for you to get angry. You understand what I'm saying? So when you have the conversations in settings like these and everybody has a view, those views can validate what you may be feeling for yourself, and sometimes disrupting your thought process because you don't even know which direction to go in. But if we're not having the conversation and we're not normalizing the conversation around just our being, our state of mind, and how, our emotional state can cause so many other things. Do you know one of the ways in which I get a lot of men to open up for therapy and counseling is when I talk about sexual dysfunction, erectile dysfunction, and sexual dysfunction? Oh, nobody wants to be sexually dysfunctional or erectile dysfunction. So I will come get therapy because I don't want to end up in that state. So you see how the priorities are. Everybody's priorities are a little different. Some people like, man, I will go to prison, but I don't want to be sexually dysfunctional. I don't want to be erectile dysfunction, but I will, so understanding why these conversations are so important and individualized. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hola.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Brett. Greetings from Africa and greetings from Nigeria. It's so dear to me, the topic you are treating right now. And from what I've learned from you today, it seems it's almost impossible for one to live a trauma-free life. Yeah, and if that's true, what are the primary tools or the skills that must be readily available once you discover that you are in a trauma situation or a traumatic situation, so that it doesn't escalate immediately from your reactions?
Brett, you're muted. You're muted. Brother Brett.
Yeah, my screen just went a little bit because I was trying to bring up something for Brother Ola. Thank you for your question, and thank you for that. I think one of the first things that we have to understand is what is trauma, right? Because to your question, a lot of us are living in trauma, have experienced trauma, affected by trauma. We don't even know it's trauma, right? And so the first thing is when we identify and we can understand what trauma is, and then we will realize that, okay, this event happened and this is how I'm feeling as a result of that. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to feel like I don't need the help, or it's nothing for me to think that because I'm a man, I shouldn't be emotional. I just watched my friend got killed, or I just watched, a Trump, you know what I'm saying? So the first thing is we need to break down, just like I did with the mental health definition, break down what is trauma, right? And when we break down that and we understand that trauma is how we react to an incident. We're all in this room right now, right? All in this space right now, and something could happen. And some of us just laugh it off and we're good. Some people be like, holy crap, what just happened? Like, oh my God, what, you know what I'm saying? So everybody reacts to trauma differently. But to your question, my brother, the first thing we need to do is help to break down the definition of trauma. And that trauma is a very big part of our lives every day, every different way. We have experienced some level of trauma, but also generational trauma that has been passed down to us, right? So you're talking about Africa, Nigeria. God knows that from our ancestry, from the beginning, all the way to from Africa to all the way around the world, trauma is in the very earth that we walk on. But one of the things that I will say on top of that is a lot of people don't know that trauma is also energy, right? Our emotions is energy. When you feel an emotion, it is an energy that you feel that it either makes you cry, make you laugh, make you sad, make you violent, aggressive. It's energy. So if we don't understand how that energy, my brother, for example, you're in Nigeria, you're in Africa, Nigeria, I'm here in the US. Just by us having this conversation and the words from this conversation evokes emotions within you all the way halfway across the world. So it's not even about just even being physically in the presence of each other. We have to be careful also of the things that we are hearing and seeing and how the energy from those things affects us as well. Did I answer that question for you?
Yeah, thank you. You did. It's a very great answer. And another thing I want to ask is, you find yourself in a situation where you have this constant rumination, and it's kind of affecting your productivity level. And sometimes, you just get over it, and not too long from there, this thing just find a way to slip back into your mind again, and it keeps driving you back, pushing you back. How do you overcome that?
Well, you have to address it, my brother. You have to address it, because the fact that you feel something, this is one of the biggest challenges that we face. We feel that something is not right. We feel that something is off. But instead of saying, let me go address it, or let me go and try to figure it out, we're either avoiding it or we're trying to self-medicate to treat it. We're not going to, let me go get, let me talk to someone, let me get a little therapy and counseling. No, I know something's not right, but I don't want to address it. I'm going to deal with it my way. So I'm self-medicating through whatever ways, or I'm deflecting from that. And then guess what? Next month, 6 months down the line, or a year from now, here the situation comes back again, and I'm feeling the same way. One of the big example of that, Ola, is the fact that we have a lot of us as men who we never address the trauma from a relationship. So we take that trauma into another relationship, and now the new relationship is affected by the same thing that happened and we blame the other person, we blame the partner, we blame everybody else, but we never look within ourselves to realize that we are the one that's carrying that trauma, that energy into every aspect of our life. And then if untreated, it can manifest itself in all kinds of ways, whether outwardly or inwardly, whether aggressively or silently, whether, in so many ways. It's an individual thing, but the more we normalize the conversation, is the more those of us who are really going through these experiences can know that it's okay to talk. It's okay to get help. It's okay to really express how we're feeling and what we're feeling. And Derek can tell you, it's been a long journey to where we are right now, just with the little bit of the conversation. It took 20 years just for us to be able to say, okay, yeah, mental health is really a thing. So can you imagine what it's going to take now for us to even go further in really delving into that?
Well, Brett, you're definitely a champion in this conversation. We definitely would love for you to come back. We're winding down for the evening. This has been a rich conversation, and you're normalizing it for us, which is so important. And we appreciate you. But Adisha, you're the last person that have your hand up. Did you want to say something before we?
Yeah, just something real fast to what Brother Brett was saying, and that was related to terminology. When we hear these terms, it makes us afraid. It's made us afraid for years. Oh, this one is crazy. This one is out of their mind. So of course, we got to learn how to drop those labels, and we could better deal with the mental health issues we have in our neighborhoods, whether it's family, friends, or whomever. But I want to say one more thing related to the mask, right? We can't let racism off the hook either, because they told us in the pandemic, they said Black people were not able to get the services to get the shot. So we have to be unafraid to let racism, we can't let racism off the hook. We cannot. They told us we don't run the media. They said that Black people, they didn't say they were not willing to take the shot. They said they couldn't get the shot. All of a sudden, they didn't have enough shots. And then all of a sudden, when the pandemic is practically over, they seem to show a commercial every hour.
Thank you, Brother Dishe, for your. Jerome, you had something you wanted to say before we close out? Brother Jerome, you're muted.
While Jerome is getting his audio fixed, I'll share something with you.
Please.
I was speaking at an event with about 600 people in the room. These are clinicians, and they asked me to come in to be a guest speaker. So I'm sitting in the room. There is all levels of clinical people in the room, right? So I get up to do my presentation. I said, "Good morning, everyone. My name is Brett Scudder, and I'm crazy."
Have to speak. Okay.
I'm sure you got a response.
I just watched the whole room and the physiological response around the room. And you could tell some people were like, hold on, wait a minute, who's this guy? He said he's crazy. Like we have, and I wanted to go to say that because of what Brother Adisha just said. The word crazy is not a bad word. It's how we use the word in the context of the word. When I was done with my presentation, I got a standing ovation in that room, right? People were like, it's the first time I've ever heard a crazy person talk so sane and a crazy person talk so much knowledge. Like I have now redefined my thought process around crazy. And I said, thank you very much. That was my intent. Goodbye. Have a good day. And I left.
Yeah, well.
Go on, Jerome.
Yes, Brother Brett. My question is, you had made a statement earlier. You said that 98% of the people who commit suicide, no one knows that they're going to commit suicide. So to one walk through life with the frame of mind that everyone is going through issues.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
We should.
Wow.
And I think by us doing that, one of the things that happens by us doing that is we tear down those prejudgmental thoughts in our head, right? So I give you an example. We are very judgmental, whether we like it or not. Every time we see someone or every time we hear something, there are these thoughts that come up in our head, whether we like it or not. And until we get to the point where we stop being judgmental, and that judgmental piece actually comes from even our own selves, right? In terms of how we even look at ourselves. When we move away from that, a lot of things will change for us. But right now, the struggle is real. Right now, the struggle is extremely real because a lot of us are just so afraid of anyone knowing what we're going through and the responses that people are going to say to us. So we hide behind the mask. That mask is our safety net. And trust me, it's not wise for us to try to force people to open up because let me tell you, once they open up, God knows you don't know what's going to come through that door. You don't know the Pandora's box that you're opening up. So we have to be very careful of how we approach the conversation and also how do we allow each other to feel a sense of worth, knowing that everything that we're going through is not a bad thing. And it's that something that we can still be holistically healthy of. I wanted to show you something real quick, Uncle Mike, before you wrap up. While you're doing your wrap up, let me bring this slide up while you're doing that. I just really want to show you guys something. Go ahead, Uncle Mike. I'm bringing it up in a minute.
Okay, my wrap up is we definitely need you to come back. I mean, that's no question. I'm gonna ask Uncle Derek to contact you, because I would love for you to come back and more or less give us some of the tools that we can use. You know, I have a grandson, and at times I'm challenged on how to get him to express his feelings, how to create that safe environment for him. I try to model it, but I'm sure there's a lot of things that you can teach us and show us how we can navigate and normalize this conversation and be more effective in serving others as we serve ourselves. So my hope is that you will come back, and you're welcome to come back, and I'll leave that up to Derek to make that happen. So he'll be blamed if it doesn't happen.
Uncle Mike.
All right.
Uncle
So
Mike,
why
Uncle Mike, please, can we request for this slide presentation as something that we can?
We're recording this, so we definitely can get that to you.
I mean, it's like the entire slide.
So I want you to take a look at the screen while you're having your wrap up closing remarks. Derek, you know, you always, you know, we in the fight, brother. We always in the fight. So whenever you need me to come back, I'll wait for that big deposit as you know, the big check to say, hey man, we giving you something to come. I'm just messing. Listen, take a look at the screen while you're having your wrap up to give you a look at the work that we've done over the last 4 years. And when you look at the numbers, the one thing I want you to look at is a second line that says the number of people and the ages of the number of people. To go back to Jerome's question, Jerome, why 98% of the people no one knew is because they were being looked at in so many ways. They were great achievers, young people who had great grades in school. They were athletic, people who had financial stability, that they were very successful, big title, big roles. You know, you look at Miss USA last year who killed herself in Manhattan, jumped out of the building. Everybody was like, oh my God, she's such a beautiful Black woman. And she's so well accomplished, all that. You look at all the suicides that have happened with people who are very successful. And you would think to yourself, hold on, why are these people killing themselves? Like society looks at them as successful. This is why you can never assume what people are going through or that you know someone, is because you really, really don't know. So as you look at the numbers that are on your screen right now, these are the number of suicide cases that we've worked on over the last 4 years and how the numbers have increased, especially in 2021 when we had 2,561 people, ages from 5 upwards, who wanted to kill themselves and was just.
Wow. This is amazing. We can't thank you enough for being in our space this evening. This has been an incredible presentation. We thank you. We salute you for the great work that you're doing, your vulnerability, for your honesty, and you are definitely an incredible role model to us as a Black man of how we can navigate through life, and you helping to normalize this conversation. So thank you. We all appreciate you greatly. And you're going to get that invitation. I don't know about the check, but anyway. Let's send the bill to Derek. But thank you.
The check is in the mail. The check is in the mail.
Make sure it's coming to the right address, okay?
In the email. It's in the email. You got to print it yourself.
Yeah, my brother. But listen, it